So have you tried using a tilt lens, or do you even know what one is? Well, I have and do, sort of, but I think everyone should consider picking one up because the type of shots that you can get are unparalleled, literally. Yet using it can be easy and easy to fudge up. So I suggest changing these two simple settings first, one of which I kept forgetting to do that may have ruined dozens of gigs of footage that I don't think I'll ever be able to capture again. And a year later, I'm still salty over it. But this video has been a long time in the making because this super budget-friendly, full-frame 50mm f1.4 lens that on the surface is just great as is, it's a 51.4, and it's a cheap lens that also does bonus things, obviously, so it tilts your plane of focus to create some really unique photos and get some crazy footage when you do it right. And I think after a year and a half with this lens, I'm now getting the hang of it, but each day I find new ways to use it. But let me just shut up and continue to show you some samples as I have been compiling an excessive amount of clips for this, and why I think everyone should have this lens or at least one unique piece of glass in their arsenal like this if you're a wedding shooter or a portrait photographer or a narrative filmmaker or just a hobbyist looking to find some unexpected ways to capture a scene. So this 50mm f1.4 is from TTArtisan, and I bought it with my own money. This is not sponsored at all, for like $170 when it first launched. And I was looking for a lens that would do things that others couldn't, that would give me a look, a dreamy sensibility to make my videos or photography stand out, or could also match a thematic element in a short film where some surrealism is called for. And most footage you are seeing is either from my FX3 and my Sony ZV-E1 and S-Log3, where I use my GAMUT Rec 709 conversion LUT because it's only $25 and it's already in my camera as my monitoring LUT. You can check them out in the description if you want because it's a cheap conversion LUT that's also easy to use. Or I was shooting with my Sony a7C II in S-Cinetone, but the mistake I made across all the cameras, which you can see here, was not setting the lens up correctly, which makes these super warpy corners and ruins some shots that, again, still just ruffles my feathers or gets my goat, or I don't know, I don't have a cooler way of saying that, but you get what I mean. Yet, I know most people probably use tilt lenses on a tripod with peaking on, and I'll show you how I do mine, but most aim to get one specific kind of shot, which this lens is most famous for and which I did very little of, because for me it's a bit played out, even though it's still a cool effect. Yeah, people love to get a high vantage point and shoot the world like it's a stage, like it's a model set, by creating almost like an optical illusion with the extreme focus plane from a distance, which you could only typically get if you were up close to a subject. And this is what makes objects appear like they're miniatures or toys on a tabletop. This is done because these lenses have a complex construction that, as you see, have these two knobs that you can tighten or loosen, which will change how easy it is to, as its name, tilt the focus plane, the line of things in focus, in different directions. So normally there is a parallel relationship between the flat surface, the sensor of your camera, and the lens plane within the glass itself, which is unique to each lens and how fast and how bright it is, along with the focusing distance, etc. But this affects your plane of focus. So from sensor to the lens, and then from your lens to the third factor or dimension, which is the subject to which you're focusing. So if your subject is flat, say to the side of a building or a person who is standing straight in front of the camera, you will get a parallel plane of focus. So their whole face will be in focus. But if you get a corner of a building, or a person turns diagonally, or words on a book resting on a table, you get a more pronounced sliver of focus, especially if you are at f1.4. And this geometric relationship is called the Scheimpflug principle, which I will poorly attempt attempt to say again, but when these three planes remain parallel, as you get in all other lenses, you get that sharp traditional depth of field look that you are familiar with, which again you can also get with this lens, as if you don't tilt the lens, you still get a solid full frame 50mm f1.4. Yet here, even if your subject remains parallel to the sensor, you can dramatically turn the line of focus in any 360-degree direction. So you can have one vertical line of f1.4 focus and just one eye in focus, or just one line of a crashing wave instead of the typical horizon or horizontal line of focus. And then the tilt feature alters that focus plane even more by using the Scheimpflug principle and finding variations with those three geometric dimensions of the sensor, lens, and subject to get them to converge or meet or be in focus in a novel, non-parallel ways. So it's easy to understand moving the subject will affect what's in focus, and now also rotating that line of focus around like a clock will move that line of focus around in a two-dimensional space, which hopefully that makes sense. But then when you add the tilt mechanic, you get control over all three variables or a third dimension, allowing you to also move your sensor plane or camera away from your subject while your lens may still be pointed at them. Now stay with me, you got this. Yet here, if we keep everything the same, the camera parallel and subject parallel, and say we turn the lens diagonally in a 2D space to say 30 degrees, we can then also tilt the lens, giving it a diagonal focus plane that crosses a third dimension, getting a line of focus also from near to far. So I could have my subject close to me in the foreground, in focus, and something far off in the distance in the background that I want to frame simultaneously in focus and in any 360-degree direction from my subject closer to me. And honestly, it's easier than it sounds to figure out once you started tinkering with it. And I hope this made sense, but once I changed the first setting, everything else got a lot easier to understand, except how to clearly say Scheimpflug. Scheimpflug. So the first setting, which I customized slightly and is a must, especially for photography, whereas the next setting is more of a must for video. But to note that this lens is not a classic tilt shift lens, it only has a tilt function, whereas photographers most commonly use the shift feature to correct converging verticals in architectural photography, whereas the tilt feature is useful for changing camera orientations from landscape to portrait for those who shoot vertically. And in combination, the tilt shift effect can enable better panoramic images without a parallax errors, which is probably a separate video unto itself, or for just allowing unorthodox camera angles, such as photographing into a mirror without capturing the camera's reflection. But again, this is only a tilt lens. And the setting I immediately turn on is peaking, but for me, I turn it to red and high, and every camera is different, but they all allow you to set this and try whatever color you want. But for me, red is the easiest to see in a monitor on a sunny day. And as soon as you do, I think the whole thing will make visual sense, as you will be able to immediately see how the plane of focus can be manipulated in real time for snapping pics or when recording. Yet in video, along with keeping the peaking on, you also have to do another essential thing, which I completely forgot at first. So with any manual focus lens, you can't forget to set the stabilization's focal length in the menu so the camera can compensate for it, which is easy. So here's how you do it on my Sony. Go into the shooting menu, number 8, image stabilization, and then the steady shot adjust will be in manual. Then set the focal length to 50 since this is a 50mm full frame lens, and now your camera can adjust itself accordingly, giving you more stable footage without that weird warpiness botching your shots. Now, I was particularly bummed I didn't have my stabilization set up properly during the sunset surf moment while I was first experimenting with the TTArtisan lens in Laguna, California, while also doubling down on my dumbness and doing the other stupid thing that I always forget to do, which is hold longer on a shot, even if I don't think I'm nailing it, because all these Sony cameras have awful monitors. So sometimes it appears that I don't nail focus or I'm underexposed or whatever, when actually both things were good and I just needed to hold for like 10 seconds longer before frantically adjusting anything else, and just breathe. And one day I hope to learn this tilt lens better, along with having patience and trusting myself more when I'm holding a camera, which I'm now coining this new easy to remember approach as the Scheimpflug and the shoot and hold and schlonger principle of photography, which honestly I think will catch on with the masses as it, rolls off the tongue like a frozen bowl of grandma's goulash, right? I don't know. I think I need some sleep, but thank you for your time and attention. I got a bunch more videos about videos like this, so consider following along and subscribing. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.